Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peter Watches TV, where I watch all the TV shows, and then I come over here and I react to them. So if you like to watch TV shows and you like to talk about TV shows, why not subscribe to my channel and come over here and let's talk TV. Today I want to talk about this week's episode of Sister Wives, which is Season 19, Episode 23, The Stars Will Fall from the Sky. I am having a very difficult time starting filming this video. This is actually my third time starting it. I've stopped it and I've started it again. I'm just having a really hard time talking about this episode. This for me, in 19 seasons of watching the show, almost completed 19 seasons of watching the show, this was absolutely, like I'm sure many of you, the hardest episode for me to watch because it was about Garrison's passing. I knew that that's what this week's episode was going to be about. I didn't know how they were going to handle it. I didn't know how production was going to handle it. I'll be honest with you, there's been a lot of things that I have issues with production with this show. And so I was very apprehensive to go in and watch this show because I was like, please pay homage to Garrison, you know, do it in a very respectful way. I was really, really worried about how, I was worried watching this episode for the sake of the family, obviously for the sake of Garrison and, you know, and just his siblings. And it just, for me, I was really worried about how they were going to handle this show. And to be honest with you, like, I've talked to a couple people about it since I watched it last night, and I really don't know how I feel about it. I will say this, I started off last night taking notes, because if you watch this week's episode, I know there's a lot of people that watch this channel and they say, you know, like, I don't watch Sister Wives, I just watch your reactions. And typically my reactions to Sister Wives are very tongue-in-cheek and, you know, joking about, you know, Robin's kids' names and things like that. That will not be today's video. In fact, I don't even think that I'm going to reference my notes at all. I think I'm just going to talk to you like I was talking to my friends last night on the phone after I watched the episode. I think that's kind of how I want to handle this video today, because I did start taking notes last night. I took notes until about, I would say, a fourth of the way through the episode, and if you watch this week's episode, you'll know that that's when they started discussing Garrison's passing. So I did take notes at the beginning of it. The whole episode starts off at Christine's house, and they're playing in the backyard, and they're throwing a Frisbee around. It's this whole situation. So I was taking notes about that. And then it goes to Mary's house, and I'm sitting here watching it, right? And I'm like, you know, they put this warning trigger statement up at the beginning about, you know, they were going to have discussions about people taking their lives and things like that. So I was like, okay, so they are going to discuss it. I just didn't know how they were going to do it. And in fact, last week when I watched the trailer for this week, at the end of last week's episode, the trailer I've seen online talked about how they were going to address Garrison's passing this week. And for anybody that, you know, watches Sister Wives and keeps up with Sister Wives, I don't read a lot of the blogs or the online stuff. From time to time, I'll watch, you know, the Facebook reels that the siblings put up, or, you know, the wives put up and stuff like that, or the funny things about Cody and Robin and whatever. I'll watch some of those things. I do keep up with the news. I just don't keep up with, like, every specific aspect of the news. So for any of us out there in the Sister Wives universe, we obviously knew about Garrison's passing last year. And so I think if you're like me, we were all kind of waiting to see how are they going to address it on the show. I mean, this is the 23rd episode. Most Sister Wives seasons have between like 18 and 24 episodes. So I was like, I was like, please do not let them end this season. Don't let it do this, like, cliffhanger thing. So I watched 1,000 Pound Sisters. I did not love that when Caleb passed away on 1,000 Pound Sisters that they ended the season that way. I thought it was disrespectful to Caleb. And so I was like, please do not end the season. Like, let's not make a moment out of Garrison's passing for a TV show. I was like, let's do it respectfully. Let's, you know, please not do that. So they had put this statement up. So last week when I watched the trailer for this week's episode, they didn't really show anything about it being this way. Now, online, I had seen the trailer where they did show that they were going to talk about it this week. So I knew that that's what this week's episode was about. My friends had told me, they're like, okay, you know, this is the week where they're going to talk about Garrison's passing. I just had no idea how they were going to do it. you know, and I was worried because I was like, I've had some issues with how productions handled things in the past, and I was like, I hope they handle this respectfully. So they put up a statement at the beginning, and they said, you know, like, this is like a trigger warning for talking about people, like, you know, taking their lives, mental health issues, things like that. And so I was like, okay, so this is going to be the issue. So it starts off at Christine's, and then it goes to Mary's, and Mary's at the B&B, and it's her last guest that she's ever going to have at the B&B, and Jen's there. And then it, like, they're talking about what they're going to do, what she's going to do with the B&B next, and turn it into this event space. And then Mary is in, like, her confessional, and she's, like, filming, and you can hear the producer say, okay, we're going to talk about, like, the carriage house. And Cody starts calling her. And so she's like, I texted him, like, he knows what I'm doing right now, like, whatever. And so he calls her, like, 3 times, and then she texts him, and he says it's an emergency. And so you know that this is how they're going to do it. Well, I don't know what I have kind of, like, if I were a producer on the show, the way that I will say this, okay? I thought they handled it okay. I thought that they addressed it. I thought that they were respectful. I think it could have been done so much differently. And I'll get to that in just a second. What I would have liked to have seen from an episode about this. So it goes to Mary, and then you can tell that, like, Mary gets on the phone with Cody, and she kind of, like, gets off the couch and walks in the other room. So for anybody that has watched the show, keeps up with the show, we knew that that was what the phone call was about, right? And so then it flashes to this, like, montage of, like, all the, like, Janelle, Cody, Robin, Mary, Christine, all of them sitting there, like, on the confessionals. And so we know that we're going to get interviews from them. And then it goes in, and they start talking about Garrison taking his life. And, you know, throughout the episode, Janelle really addressed a lot about his mental health issues and his drinking. Which, in all honesty, I was really, like, I thought that I really liked that she addressed it so blatantly. The one thing I respected about how they handled the show was that they didn't shy away from the honesty of what had happened. And I thought that, you know, first of all, the confessionals are done. This is, you know, probably months after this has happened. And so, you know, for me, it was like the confessionals were, it was such a hard episode to watch. I mean, for me, in, you know, 19 seasons of watching this is the hardest episode I've ever watched. And so I'm watching it, and I don't know, like, there were moments for me that, like, watching Janelle talk about it was, I mean, it was so hard for me. And I think that loss in general, you know, on some of my other channels, I talk a lot about grief, and I talk a lot about loss. I think grief and loss in general is so hard to navigate, and I think every single different person's situation with a specific grief looks so completely different. And I myself have, you know, had several situations around me where people have taken their lives. And so I do have, like, a personal relationship to that journey, and how it affects the families, and how it affects the friends. And, you know, I've had friends of mine, and, you know, how it affects the siblings and things like that. And so I feel like that's been around me a lot. And so I was going into this episode with that and how they were going to handle it. I think some of the moments for me, like watching Janelle talk about it just really crushed my soul. The part where they asked Christine, the one thing I didn't love about the producers is I felt like they kind of pushed them to emotionally talk about some things that I don't know that they were ready to talk about. You know, Christine talked about the service and how she looked at McKelty at the end of it, and she said one of Garrison's favorite lines from a movie, and to look to the stars. And so, about this dragon and looking to the stars, and that he always loved the stars and stuff like that. That part was so hard for me to watch. And I don't know about the rest of you, but, like, most of the kids are not on the show anymore. I mean, Robin's kids are on the show, but, you know, and some of Christine's kids are on the show. Aspen and McKelty are kind of regularly on the show. Peyton pops in every once in a while. But I think that we know the rest of the kids really don't want to be on the show. Maddie's on the show because Janelle's moving out there. But the rest of the kids, I think we know at this point, don't really want to be on the show. Garrison didn't want to be on the show. And I think that was one of the things for me. It was like, how are they going to handle this? How is production going to handle this in a respectful way, knowing that he didn't want to be on the show anymore? He didn't want any part of the show. I'm assuming that's what I've heard. So I'm just assuming that he didn't really want any part of this. But at the same time, he was part of this family. I mean, I binge watched the show last year, but for those of you that have watched it for the last 15 years or whatever, I mean, it's hard to watch the show and not feel like you're close to this family, that these kids, like, you watched them grow up. I mean, I can remember, you know, Garrison and, you know, Gabriel getting, you know, the fight outside the van. I mean, I can remember all of that. I can remember, you know, like, him getting into, you know, going into, like, the garden, stuff like that. I mean, it was, like, these really cool moments. Like, I'm sitting there and I'm watching it and I'm remembering all these moments. And so for me, I think the hardest part was watching Gabriel be interviewed. I really didn't expect it, in all honesty. I mean, I thought that maybe some of the siblings would be on there, but I didn't expect for Gabriel to be on there. I really didn't. You know, Gabriel and Garrison were so close. Gabriel's the one that found him. I really didn't expect for Gabriel to be on there. I really didn't expect to get super emotional in this video today. And it was really hard for me to watch. Even the parts with Cody. I will say this, and this is one thing I will say, is that you know, in a time like this, I've seen a lot of people say things online, and, you know, there's a lot of speculation about, apparently McKelty had a falling out with her dad and Robin after the funeral. I don't know what that's about. If somebody knows, please let me know in the comment section below. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if they're going to address it on the show. I think in a situation like this, you know, I think we want to point fingers and we want to be, you know, flippant about situations like this. You know, whatever. I think for me at the end, watching Cody talk about the rules of lockdown, you know, and you can see that Cody's blaming himself a lot and saying that, like, he said something towards the end of that, in retrospect, like, none of that is important whatsoever. And I think when I see those comments online where people are, like, just, like, coming for Cody and stuff, you know, I've had friends of mine that have been in very similar situations where the last conversation they had with their spouse or their best friend or their sibling or their parent was not the conversation they wished they had had. Their relationship wasn't left, whether it happened this way or whether it happened, their passing happened another way, where the last conversation they had was not the conversation they wished they had had as being their last. And I think to come down hard on somebody in that, I mean, like, it's, you know, I mean, I don't think it's necessary in this moment. I think there is enough wrong in the whole realm of the Sister Wives universe that Cody and Robin have done that I don't know that I think that this is the moment that we need to beat them when they're down, if that makes sense. For me, that's just my take on it. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, he's still a father. And I think one of the things that was hard for me is that when you're watching it, you know, and, like, we watch this show, I mean, now their situation is completely different. You know, Janelle lives with Maddie in North Carolina. The other kids are moving out there. She talks about Gabriel moving out there. I think she said that. She talks about, you know, they're moving out. Savannah's moving out there. You know, Christine's in, you know, Utah with David. The kids are all around her. And Cody and Robin are, you know, in Flagstaff with their kids. And then, you know, Mary is in, you know, in Utah at the bed and breakfast, which she's closed down now to make an event space. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm watching it and I'm thinking about, and maybe this isn't a popular opinion, I don't know, but I'm thinking about, like, the first couple seasons that I watched it, when they really, 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 you know, wanted us to understand that they all raised the kids together as this huge family, right? And I can remember, like, watching it when, you know, people would, like, spend more time with one mom than the other mom, and, you know, this huge deal of how they would, like, you know, gravitate towards one mother than the other mother and things like that. And so if that were true, if what we saw was true back then they all did, you know, raise Garrison. They all were a big part of that. I don't know how much that is true, you know. I saw something, I think it was Savannah. I saw some Facebook thing where, like, she was watching Cody talk about his relationship with Garrison, and she made some comment about, because at the end of it, he said, you know, like, he was grown and, like, he can move out, and she said, like, he's grown, he needs to move out or whatever, and she's like, yeah, but Dayton still lives at home, which is interesting because Dayton's never on the show, you know, which that doesn't really have anything to do with this episode. I don't know, for me, it was really hard to watch the interviews, I think that one of the things that surprised me was that, maybe I missed it, but I asked both of my friends I spoke to, and they both said the same thing. Was there anywhere in the episode where it said this episode was dedicated to Garrison Brown, like they do in TV shows when, like, a producer passes or something? For me, okay, I understand that the producers were trying to show this in real time, like a reality show, But I think at this point, after 19 seasons, we know how much of the show is scripted. We know that when they have Cody and Robin outside having this conversation, that there's been 15 takes. We know how scripted the show is, right? This could have been a moment for them to just do it completely unscripted. And I understand that they showed the part with Christine at the beginning, and then they go to Mary's, and then they show Mary's confessional, because what they wanted to show was, well, this happened while we were filming in real time. I understand that. I understand what production was trying to do. Like, we're a reality show, and this happened, and we're going to show the reality of what happens when we're filming, but I don't think it was necessary. I think in this moment, I don't know if they have a bunch of, like, and I'm really, this is no criticism, I don't understand it. I don't know if they have a bunch of, like, 20-year-old producers that are putting a show together, but with a little life experience, I don't even think it takes should be much older than 25 or 30 to step back from this and say that the life of Garrison Brown was more important than this episode, I think is what's important, out of the respect of him also not wanting to be on the show anymore. I think there was a way that you could have done it. I was hoping for they would make an announcement. I don't think, like, I would never have included the Christine part at the beginning. I would have shown, if they really wanted to show, like, this happened in real time, I wouldn't have shown the nonsense of Mary closing her Airbnb. That could have come in another episode. They could have tagged it on to the end of the last episode. I would have shown, and the Christine part was completely unnecessary for this episode. What they were trying to show was, we are a reality show, and things like this happen in a reality show, and we're not going to put the camera down. So we're going to show you the reality. But the reality is that they don't do that. There's so much that they've never shown us on the show, that at the expense of Garrison Brown's passing, it really, to me, it just kind of made me sick to my stomach, if you wanted the truth. I felt like if they were going to do that, they should have just started with Mary's confessional. They should have put this statement up, and they should have shown Mary's confessional, and then they should have gone into all the interviews. At the end, when they had Janelle in the kitchen with her sister, I thought that was very appropriate. That interaction to me was so heartfelt, to see, her sister, like, crying in the kitchen and asking Janelle, to see Janelle say, that she knows that Garrison's gone, but that sometimes she forgets. I think that is the mantra of grief itself. I thought that was such a teachable moment for anybody going through grief and situations like that. The discussions about mental health and how she said this is a constant conversation that we're having in our home now. I thought that was important. I think in a situation like this, if you've ever lived through it, there's so much blame. There's so much shame that goes along with it. It's like, how do we talk about it? Did I fail them? Is there a conversation I missed? What could I have done? And Cody addresses at the end. In all honesty, I didn't mind the conversation at the end. I didn't mind the conversation with Robin and Cody. What I found surprising was, okay, and I'm not dissing her, and everybody grieves completely differently. The lack of emotion that Robin had through this whole situation, I was just like, I was kind of surprised by it. I mean, Christine, of the mothers, okay? Obviously Janelle is going to be, the hardest affected. But, like, Mary was, like, extremely emotionally moved by it. The part with Christine talking about the service just broke me. It just absolutely broke me. And then Robin's just, like, curled up in a chair. And I know that these scenes were filmed months later, but where Cody's talking about, even to, like, have emotion towards your husband that is saying, I'm struggling. Like, I'm blaming myself. I'm playing the what-if game, Which, having been in this situation, having known people that have passed this way, you do play the what-if game. I don't know that I love that they ended it on Cody and Robin. I don't know that I love that. And I'm not going to get in talk about this episode and speculate about Garrison and Cody's relationship and all that kind of stuff. I've seen it online. I've seen everybody talk about that. Speculate away if that's what makes you happy. I don't know. For me, I don't think it's necessary. I've had friends, like I've said, friends and family members of mine that have gone through situations like this. And in that moment, to kick somebody when they're down, and you're talking about the worst grief that a parent will ever feel in their entire life, no matter the circumstances. The blame that I just can't even imagine that. I don't need to get in a video and already state the obvious, okay, about the lockdown and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know if that's necessary. What I was hoping for, okay, in an episode, and if they wanted to start with Mary to show that it was happening in real time, I think that they could have done that. Show Mary's interview with her getting the call from Cody, then flash all the people, then do the interviews. I felt like the interviews were very short, and I felt like they were I would have loved an episode of all of all the people that were willing to be on it. And I know that there's a lot of people that don't want to be on the show anymore. I know there's a lot of siblings that don't want to be on the show. I think they're going to do the funeral in the next week's episode, so maybe they're going to show a lot of the siblings. But I understand that a lot of the siblings don't want to be on the show, and I respect that. I think which is very telling of the show in itself, that a lot of these siblings just want no part of the show anymore. Which I think is why I was so surprised by Gabriel being on the show. I also was surprised because Gabriel didn't really talk. And this is what I so loved about Gabriel on the show, is that, or in this episode, that Gabriel really didn't talk that much about the passing. He talked about what an amazing human being Garrison was. You know, it was really respectful how he handled it. I would have liked if they had gone with Mary in her interview, then made the announcement, flash something on the screen, then go to Janelle and Cody, and then go to each of the mothers and the siblings that wanted to be on the show and have the interviews. And while they're talking, I don't know, maybe, I feel like they showed like 6 pictures of Garrison. And then at the end, done like a montage of like all of these really memorable moments of Garrison, because there's many, you know, there's many memorable moments of Garrison on the show, and they could have done like a 5-minute montage of like the best moments of Garrison on, and they could have played music on it. I mean, I knew right away because the music was different on this week's episode. If you watch Sister Wives regularly, you'll know. This week's episode, the music was completely different right out of the gate. It was very sad music. They could have put this beautiful montage together. I mean, you're talking about a production company, okay, that knows how to do these things. They could have put a montage together that was so respectful and would have been so beautiful of Garrison's memory to do all this kind of stuff. They showed a couple pictures, but it wasn't really that much. And then they could have even shown the Janelle in the kitchen, you know, with her sister talking. I also really wish they would have ended. Okay, they could have shown Cody and Robin talking out the fire. I thought it was appropriate. And then I wish they would have shown Janelle and Janelle's conversation with her sister. And Janelle talking about, sometimes I forget that he's gone and then I remember. And then shown the montage. And then said this episode was dedicated to the memory of Garrison Brown. I just didn't understand why it just, to me, it didn't seem like, it really didn't seem like that different of an episode of the Sister Wives and how they film it, other than, I don't know, I just thought, you're in your 19th season, and, I mean, this person that has grown up, and we've watched him grow up, like, you have a few interviews, and, I don't know, I just was like, I just thought it could have been, I thought it was done well, I thought it was done okay, but I thought it could have been so much more respectfully done. And if you're going to do one episode and then move on from there, I think that would have been the way to do it. And just say, like, and, you know, we're doing this one episode. I don't know. I think to dedicate one entire episode, which it really was, but the Christine stuff, the nonsense at the beginning of it was not needed. Mary talking about closing down the B&B was not needed. That was included just to show that this occurred while they were filming. And then it kind of panders to people online speculating, people online talking about it. That's not necessary, okay? This is a moment in time where, as a viewer that's invested in this family, has been invested in this family since season 1 when I started binge watching it last year, I don't need an episode to show me that you guys are filming a reality show, okay? For me, it would have been more meaningful if the entire show was dedicated to Garrison Brown, which it was, but it was like bookmarked around or bookshelved around this kind of like, hey, we're filming a reality show. I don't know, I just thought it could have been different. Was anybody else surprised that they didn't show like a montage? I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm just guessing, but maybe it's because Garrison didn't want any part of the show, and so they were going to do that, but they discussed it anyway. They had to discuss it. Everybody knew that they were going to discuss it at some point because they said that they had discussed it on the show. There's no way they could have gone on with the show and never just brought it up, you know? So we knew that they were going to address it at some point, and I guess I just was wondering how they were going to address it. I don't know. I was just kind of like hoping for like this montage at the end of it, you know, that Garrison being on this show, the majority of his life, this show was a huge part of his life, whether he was on it or not, you know, his family was on it. I don't know, to just be like, I don't know. I just was a little disappointed in how the producers did it. So, but it was such a sad episode, and probably the hardest episode, definitely the hardest episode I've ever watched of Sister Wives. So anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm not going to get into my notes today. I did take notes, like I said, through like about a fourth of it, and then I just stopped, and I thought, no. it was at the part of like when Mary, in her confessional, I was like, I'm not taking notes. I'm just gonna pay attention to this episode. I want to watch this episode tonight, and I just want to, I just want to feel this episode, and I did. And I don't get really emotionally moved anymore when I watch Sister Wives. And obviously I have like a personal feelings related to the situation, and have had friends of mine and people that I know pass this way. But it wasn't just that. It was that Garrison was a huge part of this family, and to watch in real time people's grief was really, really difficult to watch. So anyway, let me know what you thought in the comment section below. I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.